So life is a mirror reflecting back on me. So we're going to take that a bit deeper, because this time of year, this season that we're in right now, is one where there's a lot of emotions that come up. There's a lot of things that are buried in us that surface. There's a lot of unhealed. We're very vulnerable at this time of year. This is what I've come to understand. There is a vulnerability between Thanksgiving and Christmas that is absolutely incredible. And in order to look at that, we've got to better understand it. And when we can understand it, then we can forcefully begin to shift and shape that. And so I want to start off with this idea of life as a mirror reflecting back to me is really what? It's our self-talk reflecting back to us. It's all of our thoughts that we have that are built with this feeling and this emotion. And the emotion determines the feeling, and the emotion keep building and building, and then the experience comes from that. And then we find that as we build that, we get triggered by it. Someone will say a word or have a posture or do anything, and we've anchored that into something which triggers into us this anger, this resentment, this despair, this depression that can come out unexpectedly when everything in our lives is going well, and all of a sudden we're saying, what the heck just happened to me? And so what I've come to understand is anger is something really interesting. That in order to be angry, we have to think about something that happened or something that someone said. Okay. Now we have to put a judgment on it, and we have to attach an emotion to it. And the emotions normally we attach to it are rage or hostility or things of that nature. And then we have to make a decision. I'm going to decide to be angry. You ever done that? Ever made a decision where you're with someone and says, you know what? I'm a love man or I'm a love woman, but today I'm going to be mad at that bitch. I'm just going to be mad at her. And I'm going to choose to be mad because, you know what? I get to choose to be mad. Did that ever work out for you? It doesn't. It takes you deeper into the rabbit hole. It takes you deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And then what happens when we do that enough, it becomes a habitual pattern of thought that gets sunk into our mind. And then whenever we may even attach it to seeing the person's face, to hearing a certain word, to a body language, and whenever that happens, that emotion comes up and we don't have a clue. You'll be there and you'll be with your partner and say, I don't know why, but you just pissed me off. And you don't realize it's something that happened 20 years ago, or it's something that didn't even happen with that person. It happened with something back when you were a child, a misunderstanding of something. So I woke up Friday morning at 1:30. And I woke up, and this is the affirmation that went through my mind. It said, I pause, I breathe, and I listen before I act. Well, let's reflect on that. I pause, I breathe, and I reflect, or I listen before I act. And that thought wouldn't leave me. And so I got up. I couldn't sleep because that thought was going on and on and on in my mind. And I realized that no matter what the action is, whether it's a good or it's a bad or it's whatever it is, if we pause, we disengage from the event. We are no longer automatically triggered by the event. We have put it's like we reboot. We just stop. We don't allow any emotion. We don't allow any feeling. We're going to pause right there. And what does pausing do? Pausing is like going into meditation, isn't it? In meditation, you just silence the mind. When you silence the mind, you're not going to bring forward all of the thoughts and patterns that were there before. So you pause. And you breathe. When you pause and you start focusing on that inner breath, just focusing on that inner breath over and over on that breath, what are we doing? We're connecting to life. We're actually going in and we're actually realizing through the simple act of recognizing our breathing, we realize that we're connecting with life. So what are we connecting with in life? We're connecting into what? Oneness. We're connecting into the divine. We're connecting into infinite possibility. We're connecting into all that is. We're connecting into hope. We're connecting into dreams. We are pausing and we're breathing, and breathing is life itself, which is our greatest gift, is to breathe. And then what do? We listen. What do we listen for? See, this is where the key comes in. This is where you had to have done your prior work, because you're going to listen for the answer to a specific question that is unique to you. The question might be, how will my reaction be more loving? The question might be, how will my action further my vision or my purpose? How will my reaction allow me to experience more joy, me to experience more abundance, me to experience oneness? How will that support me as I go out and I become the individual where anyone can come and feel non-judgment and non-attachment? You see, when we can ask those questions, when we can sit there and we can say, okay, we're in the midst of about to have a political argument, okay? We pause and we breathe and we ask the question, how is having this discussion about stimulating more love? How is having this discussion making me feel better? See, this takes courage. This takes consciousness. This takes awareness, because out there today, there is so much distraction. And I really want to rephrase that. There's distraction out there. But here's what happens with distraction. Okay, 20 years ago, everyone here is above 20 years old. No, they're not. There's a few people not 20 years old. But 20 years ago, if the event in Ferguson had happened, would we really know about it here in Dallas? If anything, it would be what? It would be a blip in the newspaper of about this much in one column. That would be all that would be there. If the event that happened in New York with the gentleman that was strangled, would we really have a knowledge of that? But what's happened? Everything now is magnified. It is magnified because of the electronic age, because of social media, and we're constantly bombarded with that same image, and those images are all about what? Fear. So before you go into fear, are you pausing? Are you breathing? Are you listening? Or are you allowing the nonsense of the media, of society, to fill your mind and control who you are and what you feel? We're hearing more and more and more about things that are affecting us, about stress. And you got to wonder, if we didn't know so much about stress, would we have as much stress? Think about that. You know, just by the fact that we put out there that, careers and jobs are stressful. Are they really? Or are we bought into the idea that careers and jobs are stressful? Have we bought into the idea that being in the corporate world, it's stressful? I did. When I was in the corporate world, I said, it's the corporate world, and the higher up you go, what do you have? More responsibility. What comes with more responsibility, more stress? That's nonsense. You do not have to have stress with more responsibility. You do not have to have stress to be the leader. Here's what it takes is you have to be authentic. You have to be real. You have to be looking toward the greater purpose. If you are looking toward the greater purpose, you're being authentic, you're being real, you're always learning from your mistakes. What is there to be stressful about? Stress is self-talk. It's self-talk and it's self-taught. Taught to us by all the outside influences that were out there. So you go to the great avatars, Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed, Krishna, all the avatars, they talked about love. Over and over and over they talked about love. And love means to live in a state of non-judgment, of non-attachment, and realizing that you are part of the greater whole. That's what love means. It has nothing to do with romance. That's human, that has come on and thrown this judgmental thing. I can't love you, because you don't have these qualities, but I can love you and you because you have these qualities. Is that love? That's judging people and saying, you meet my criteria. And guess what? My criteria is always slanted. Do you hear that? Our criteria is always slanted to fill some God-sized hole that we think someone outside of ourselves can fill, and it's impossible for anyone to fill that hole. So if you're married or you've got a partner or you want to have a partner and that type of thing, and you're looking for that other person to be the be-all, end-all, and to bring you this greatest joy, you are going to be living in misery and garbage for the rest of your life because you've turned your power to something that cannot be given to you. Your power is in your recognition of your oneness, of your perfection, of your joy, of your brilliance, of your magnificence, that there is nothing to change about who you are in this moment, that the very essence of all you are is God in expression. Can you dig it? So when we seek this fulfillment from outside of ourselves, what are we saying? I'm not worthy. And that is the self-talk that'll lead to the most miserable of lives ever. Because then you're in the eternal quest of pursuing material things or emotional things that are all outside of ourselves. People said to me, how can you be married this week? 3 more days will be 42 years. How can you be married 42 years? Thank you. You ought to clap for her. How do you marry for 42 years and be happy and have been judgmental? I want you to know I was. I was very judgmental. I was not always this magnificent human specimen of love that you see in front of you. I'm a very human man with human manly qualities, let me put it that way, or what we call in society human manly qualities. It wasn't until I got in my spiritual path that I started to pause and say, I'm judging her based on this. And I started to breathe, and I started going into this idea of connectedness, saying, wait a second, in oneness, we're all the same. So as I am God individualized and whole, she is God individualized and whole. Then I started to listen, and so what was my mind telling me about the relationship? What was my heart telling me about the relationship? And here's what my heart said to me. My heart said to me, I have a partner who, despite me being the biggest a-hole that ever existed when I was young, accepted me, that didn't beat me up, that didn't threaten me, that didn't yell at me. I have a partner who's always given me perfect freedom. Wherever I wanted to grow, wherever I wanted to expand, whatever new I wanted to try, I was never told no. What about the partner who, when it was time, we decided to have our 2 sons? Now, isn't that like the most perfect person where you'd have to be perfect with the person in order to want to consciously bring in 2 children? So we consciously decided on children. We were told we could not have children. Ergo, we brought our son Stephen into the world through another biological mother. We brought him into the world. We created Stephen in our mind before he came into our physical form. That was a conscious decision. So is that not the greatest idea of love? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of lust. Many moments of lust, no children. Now the second one, Matthew, was a moment of lust because we were lined up to have a second child through adoption, okay? And then Matthew came along. I want you to know if you're trying to get pregnant, go to a comedy club. That will free you and set your soul on fire. If you don't want, Anyway. And then you go on with this whole idea of evolving. And this is the thing that brought us to where we are today in relationship. And I'm going to say this because it's really important. We began a spiritual journey together. You see, we had to go from the outside world where we were looking for things outside to please us, and we had to go into a world that was within us individually so that we could understand and fall in love with ourselves so we could better love the other, giving them the same freedom. You see, it is that spiritual journey. So we found that when we first found New Thought in 1997, we went to Unity in Dallas, and I got plugged in, very plugged in. I took courses. I was up in Unity Village. I was one class away from being a licensed Unity teacher, and Jean was there. She would come on Sundays, and she would sing in the choir, and that was the extent of it. And we found what was happening is the relationship, instead of going together upwards, we were going in completely different directions. And you understand, if you've been in a relationship, when you start going in completely different directions, that's when it's no longer fun to be in a relationship. And then we found the Centers for Spiritual Living, and we started attending in Dallas. And at that moment, we started taking classes together because I said, I'm going to plug in, I'm going to take foundations. I said, would you like to take foundations with me? And then she said yes, and then we began. We began the whole new relationship. So that was in 2000. So that was 28 years into our marriage. 28 years into our marriage, we decided to start our marriage all over. Because we realized that the first 28 years were based on things that could not sustain itself. The relationship could not sustain itself because it was based on quicksand. So when we started Foundations and we started the spiritual journey, we now had things to talk about that were relevant. We had things that we had spiritual practices. Jean is always up in her room doing her meditation and prayer by herself. I'm in my room doing my prayer. We have that as the basis of our relationship so that we don't have to deal with the problems of talking about the nonsense that's in the physical world. You see, we get caught up in trying to resolve issues. Well, you're not doing this for me, or you're not doing that for me. That's poppycock. If we're having discussions about that, we're wasting our time in relationship. The relationship ought to be about, how can I better love you? How can I open my heart more so that you can know that I'm open, honest, and authentic in every single moment? Those ought to be the discussions that we're having together. Those ought to be the discussions we're having with our parents, with our children, at work, if you're an employer, with your people. How can we have a richer life together by providing this service for humanity? Wouldn't that be a great way to get employees involved? Say, okay, if you're a supervisor, saying, okay, we've got this product, and this product does these benefits. How can we collectively make the part that we're doing on that product be that much better and get a buy-in from that employee? If you can't get a buy-in from that employee, then we've got the wrong employee, and it's not that they're bad employees. They're just not vibrating at the pace that we want for our business to grow. You see what I mean? Everything comes from this idea of pausing and getting out of the confusion, getting out of the illusion, and then it comes into this idea that we must breathe and connect with the oneness of all that is, and then we must listen by asking appropriate questions of, how is this better going to serve my ability to contribute? How am I going to be better able to serve, and serve with love, and serve with joy, and serve with peace? And when I answer that question, now I can act with the power of a conscious deliberation, a conscious thought, and I am empowered. I am no longer a man or woman of the world. I am a man or woman of God. Wow. Do you feel the shift in energy because you've embraced this idea in your own mind? Do you feel that there's a little bit of clarity that's now there that wasn't there before? You see, and when we receive that clarity, when we receive that wisdom, it's not just enough to know that we had that, it's about acting upon it. You see, many times in many churches, people's lives don't change. It's because there's no daily practice, there's no acting upon it. And one of the things that we pride ourselves at Agape is that we are about taking action. We're about taking this practice, and we are religious scientists. Ernest Holmes said when he created the Church of Religious Science, which is what we are, we've just changed the name because of all this monkeyness about Scientology and Christian Science, and we don't want to be confused. But the fact of the matter is, we are religious scientists, and religious science means we take these principles that are spiritual, and we have shown by using these principles in this practical way, we can every time demonstrate that we will shift lives. We will shift our life and the power is in us. I love being called a religious scientist. I embrace that. That is who I am. When people say, what do you practice? I say, I practice religious science. See, religion has been given a bad rap because of dogma. We don't have dogma at Agape. The only dogma we have is what you create in your own mind. Well, you have perfect freedom by everything that we teach in Agape. The only thing we teach at Agape is this: there is one power, one presence, and you are the individualization of it. And the power that created the universe is the same power that is within you, and you use that power by the use of your conscious and unconscious minds together. And the more you can take and change your unconscious mind, which is the majority of your mind, by the spiritual practices that you embody on a daily basis, the quicker and easier it will be for you to demonstrate, for us to demonstrate that which we desire, and we are no longer bound by the ways of the past. We're no longer bound by society. You see, we want to fit into society, poppycock. Let's create our own society and let the rest of society come and fit in with us. You see, that's where the power is. We've got to stop worrying about what the people outside are thinking and saying, the people outside got to know about who we are so that they can come and claim their power. That's what it's about. It's about stepping into the greatness. And what I'm going to challenge you with is that over the next week, you start just thinking about this. Thinking about what is the power you desire in your life. Because we're coming into this race-conscious time of New Year's resolutions. I want you to have a spark implanted in you right now about not how much weight you're going to lose, not about what you're going to get on your job. I want you to think about, how can I love myself more so I can love others more? That's what I want you to think about this next week. How can I love myself more so I can love others more? In that, you will have embraced the greatest teaching and practice that will guarantee you happiness, joy, peace, abundance, and health. You see, when we're in love and we're in non-judgment, there's no stress. When we're in love and there's no non-judgment, we're going to be providing great service. When we provide great service, what must happen? Abundance must come back. When we're in love and we're at peace with ourselves because we accept ourselves as we are, non-judgmentally, we have the peace that we've always been seeking. You see, the answer has always been with us. We are the answer, and the answer within us is love. So as I close this talk, I want to make sure that you know one thing. Regardless of what your life experience is, regardless of what you felt in the past, regardless of your health, of your prosperity, regardless of all the mistakes you might have made, here today, I want you to know that I love you. I love you just the way you are, and I only see your perfection, your light, and I see unlimited joy coming to you. I see that because I know who you are. You are the light. You are the love. You are the individualization of God. And it is good. And so it is. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.